We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated, secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you that having a strategic plan can actually help us do more meaningful and impactful work in our lives? That is what we are going to dive into on today's episode. Today, we have an incredibly special guest, my Grandma Jeannie, who is a wonderful leader and inspiration to my life. Some of my first unofficial jobs were working in her office as a young girl. I would organize the magazines and help her clean up her office and do little odds and ends jobs, or sit in the meetings and learn from what they were doing and talking about. And this was such an influential time for me because I learned about hard work, organization, and not just doing great work, but doing meaningful work. So I got to learn and see firsthand what it looked like to do work that meant something, that left an impact and was meaningful to other people's lives. Jeanette Kester is the proud mother of 4 wonderful children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and the loving grandmother of 16 great grandchildren, each of whom she cherishes deeply. Now retired, Jeanette formerly served as the executive director at Pine Habilitation and Supported Employment, also known as PHASE, where she dedicated her career to supporting individuals with disabilities. In addition to her professional role, Jeanette has been an active member of her community, serving on the school board of the East Central District in Minnesota. She holds a degree in early childhood education and development and special education from the University of Minnesota, Duluth, and has completed postgraduate work in special education at St. Cloud State University. Jeanette is particularly passionate about educating 4-year-olds, believing that this is a crucial period for brain development. She understands that children's brains are most neuroplastic at this age, allowing them to absorb fundamental knowledge that will shape their future learning and development. Her commitment to early childhood education and special education reflects her deep dedication to nurturing the potential of every child. I mean, Grandma, that is so cool. I want to let you introduce yourself and share anything else about your story that you'd like to.
Thank you. She makes me look good. Well, as she said, I'm Jeanette Kester, better known as Grandma Jeannie, or the great grands call me Gigi. So I answer to all of those terms. Sometimes I answer to grandma and it's the wrong grandma. I'm not it. So I have to step back a bit with the great grands and let my children be grandparents. Okay. After graduating from high school, I was not I had not chosen a career of which direction I wanted to go. I started out in nursing, and then I got married and had my children. And then I went back to school. And so I was, in many cases, a 40-year-old, along with 19, 18, 19-year-olds learning what I learned. At some point, I decided that I wanted to teach, and I was interested in working with children, young children. It was fun to work with young children. I enjoyed the fun part of it. But I have also learned through experience and study that young children learn a great deal, particularly around the ages of 4. They learn a lot of things and oftentimes don't get the opportunity to know that they're learning most of what they're going to learn in their lifetimes when you stop and think about it. So I did practicums in preschools and worked as a county visitor to young families with disabled children, a child born with spina bifida or a child born with Down syndrome. I worked with them sometimes right out of the hospitals that they, after they were born, work with parents. And I had a real curriculum that showed the milestones that a child should meet. And they were not to force parents into teaching anything, but to just keep in mind what the child needs to know and keep giving them opportunities to learn these things. And so once I had that experience, I also worked with a group of young children in school when the schools took over financial responsibility for the education of young children. I worked with the schools and used a model, the incorporation of model children in with the children with disabilities so that they could learn from each other. And that was helpful because we had fun. We learned to play together, work together, to learn how to do things, and they had a model to look at. That was fun, and it was a good experience for me and for the children, I thought.
So, Grandma, can you share with us a little bit about some highlights from your career as an executive and leader, and what motivated you to actually go into more of a leadership position in your career and in some of the volunteer work that you did?
I pretty much fell into my leadership role. I was working at Phase, teaching adults. At that point in time, we realized that many of the state institutions were closing for people with disabilities, and they were coming out into the communities to live in real homes and to learn real work. And so we were pressured from the state to get people jobs, to teach them how to work. And the blessing there was that they were giving finally. They were taking their checks to the bank and getting them cashed, and they had real money. And instead of receiving, always being on the receiving end of things.
Yeah.
And that was very meaningful to those people. I remember how proud many of them were to have earned their own money and living in a real home, in a real community, and learning how to, from role models, learning how to act, that you didn't act the same way as your roommate. Maybe you you acted like the people in the street or the people that were befriending you. And there were lots of positive benefits from that role that I had. It was my my ideal was to have a great place for people to come and learn and to if needed, work on a crew of other people. We had a crew that did lawn mowing, that did lawn care. We had a crew that cleaned rooms in a hotel and things like that, that gave people opportunity, learning opportunities and opportunities to earn. As a leader, it was my philosophy of believing in people, that every person could have a job and learn. And if they were so severely disabled that they were unable to work, that they had a place to come and care for them and opportunities to enjoy other people and their caregivers and whoever was around. It was a very meaningful experience in many ways. In about 1995, 96, somewhere in there, I ran for, well, I had a school board member that called me and told me that I should run for school board. And I hadn't thought about that, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought, my children are in school. Um, Schools is very important. Involvement of parents is very important. I'll take a run for that. And I did. And I ended up working 30 years on the school board, which was a record for some. I also worked on a cooperative board that provided services to school districts. And that opportunity as a board member and phase as having a board to work with opened my eyes in many directions as to how you could have an influence on the board you served on, how you could learn about what they were offering to school districts, and also for my own board was to make sure that they had a handle on the financial responsibilities. We were funded as a day program for people with disabilities, which was something new to the state. And we worked initially with grant and aid, and then it became more like a per diem for people, how many days, how many hours they put in their day program. So the board had to be responsible in some ways for the financial operation of the organization, as well as what people were getting, what they needed to know. What was the staff? What were the staff requirements? How many staff do we need to hire? What was our ratio of staff to client? And those kinds of things. And we began our program in an old hotel building in Sandstone in Pine County, and came to the point where the building was no longer the best place for us to be. For one reason was that it gave the community a sense of old building, devalued people, and we wanted to promote people, not make them look like they belonged in an old hotel. So my word to the board was, do you want to put a roof on this building, this old hotel building, a third of what we were using, or start all over again, build new. And their vote unanimously was to build new. So we ended up tearing out down the old building, which we owned, and putting up a new building. And it was a wonderful sight for the community to have a new building. It was one of the newest buildings at that time in the town.
Yeah.
And it made people proud to see
Yeah.
a new building with the sign. And it raised I think, the sensibility of people to people that were somewhat different than they were in town, and that they were people and they could contribute to the community as well, and they did.
That's incredible. And I remember when that new building came out, that
Mhm.
was such an exciting time, and everybody was so proud of what they had created and what they had built. And I love that that really helps in sharing the message that our people matter, no
Mhm.
matter who it is you're talking about, no matter if it's the 4-year-old or an adult with a disability or any human being we look at,
Mhm.
all of our people matter
Have value,
and
yeah.
have value. Yes.
Right.
How would you say your perspective on work ethic has evolved over the years? And what principles or values have guided your own approach to reaching excellence in your work? Where this question comes from is really like, you always taught me to work hard. And, I think for a long time you had the value of being the first there and the last one out. And that can sometimes serve us, but it can also burn us out. And so I don't know if that has evolved for you over time of realizing, like, okay, yes, that's where it started. But now, over time, maybe learning how to better balance that, because you took on more and more, but you were able to do it excellently.
Mhm. Okay. My dual role, of course, my primary responsibility was phase and seeing to it that all the needs of the clients were met, and including hiring and training people to be caregivers, or as we called them, job coaches. And what a job coach needed to do in order to respect and show respect to the person they were working with. That was a strong work ethic that we expected from our caregivers.
Yeah.
We had a team of myself and a couple of the supervisors that did every interview of every individual that we hired. And we looked for certain things in that person, and was interesting to see how that interview changed over time, knowing what we needed to know in order to hire the right people.
Yeah.
We looked for things in their background, in their resume. If they didn't have a resume, um, and and they couldn't tell us what they'd done in the past, maybe they weren't fit to do this job.
Yeah.
I found a lot of people who would say, "Oh, I love working with individuals with disabilities. I met so and so on the street, and we had a conversation, and was that going to develop into that individual's ability to work day after day after day and teach somebody how to do a task correctly." Um, so it became a bit more, the interview became a bit more restrictive, a bit more in depth. And of course, we did background studies, very thorough background studies
Mhm.
on every individual coming into the program. So we had expectations. We did evaluations to show the person their performance. Um, the first evaluation came after maybe a couple months into their work. What were their viewpoints of the work they were doing? Did they have suggestions about what could be improved in that work day, or in the training of the client? Um, or did we pick up on the person's work history, what they'd done in the past? Things like that were important to their work ethic, to see that these folks could um, could work effectively and humanely with people with disabilities. Because in some point times it took a fair amount of patience
Yeah.
from the job coach to teach something over and over and over
Mhm.
again, which sometimes took place. Many of the adult clients that we worked with at Phase had been told when their adult child was an infant by perhaps a doctor that they wouldn't amount to anything.
Mhm.
Just have them go to the institution and they'll be cared for there. And some parents believed that. Some parents said, no, we're going to raise this child ourselves in our own home. It depended on certain things. Well, we found that institutions were not good places for people to grow up,
Yeah.
and especially not to learn. We found that there were very restrictive guidelines and very different ratios of client to staff in those institutions that were not beneficial to the client.
Yeah.
And so we we looked at the value of each person and what was it they needed and what could we provide. And of course, we didn't have 24/7 involvement in that person's life,
Yeah.
but we did have the opportunity to work with them every day and help that along. That was important to us to promote every opportunity we could. And in the community, I had the opportunity to talk to different groups and to tell them and explain what we were doing, what our goal was, how we saw people, and what the needs of those people were. And we were proud to have them in our community. Hopefully, that meant that um, different organizations and businesses in the community would also look at people and their value instead of their disability.
Yeah. In your experience, how does the role of really caring deeply about the people in front of you and the people that you're serving play in fostering that ability to be successful in what you're doing and make that impact that you're wanting to make?
Oh, that's a interesting question. I think I'll use the school board experience as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I think that parents need to have a really strong role in their child's education. I think the best that we could do as school board members was listen to the parents and listen to what they had to say and think about their child's education and how they were being educated.
Mm-hmm.
And much of that could be lost in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
How many opportunities did we offer for parents to be invited to give us their suggestions and their ideas about what and where and how their child was being educated? And we had many opportunities, open houses, programs put on by children. There days when we had teacher conferences, and parents came in. We were thrilled when we had a class of where 100% of the parents came to meet with the teacher and talk about what the child's goal was. And we always included the children in those conferences so that they had a say and could hear what the teacher was telling the parents and what the parents' feedback was as well. That was a very important part of us, those of us on the school board that needed to listen to what parents had to say. Of course, there was more to it than that. There was political issues, funding issues. What kinds of things did the state mandate that we do without funding? Many laws were passed where they required us to do something and we didn't have enough staff, or we didn't have enough resources to provide what they were expecting us to maintain. So oftentimes it was a good example of that was the state funding for mandated for special education was something like, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact ratio, but something like 60% of the funding for special education, which the state hadn't fulfilled for many, many years. And we had to take the funding out of our general funds, which made it hard to operate day to day. We would go to the legislature and tell them no mandates without funding. And sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. There were other times that we needed to just educate our legislators on what we needed and what we needed funding for, and the kind of statistics that we had. Like, for example, if you're in a rural area, how many buses do you need? How long do your buses last? That was transportation was an important aspect of the education of children from day to day. How did they get there? How did we get drivers? How did we get competent drivers? That sort of thing. So
there's a couple things you said, and I can see how from your deep caring for people, that is affecting the community, right? So it goes through the community and the legislature and all of that, and they're different because of you. And then imagine how many more parents are involved and at another level of caring within themselves because of how much you cared. And then all the way through to the actual child or student, when you get them involved in the decision making and the thought process, they are going to be so much more engaged. I relate it back to my teams. Like when we involve our teams at work on what we're going to do or getting their feedback on what actually works for them, because by the way, we're all making plans for them. Like they should be involved, right? It's about them. And so when you bring those kids in there and you let them be a part of that process, they not only they feel important, they feel more significant, they feel seen, they feel heard, but they are coming up with their own solutions. So they're going to be so much more engaged in what you guys are doing for them.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
As someone who has served on different boards, including like for education in schools, like you're talking about, what do you believe are those critical qualities of effective leadership in those contexts? Like, why is it so important to be an effective leader when you're part of something that really does affect that many lives?
Good question. The leaders that I've known, both in education, on the education side and the training, work training side, I'm thinking about some of the leaders that I've known and respected uh, during the length of my career. And I think of those people as and learning something from each of them,
Yeah.
is that they were committed to their organization, committed to progressing, to looking to having the vision
Yeah.
that's important, to look down the road top 5, 10 years. Where are we going to be then? And what's going to be changed? What's going to be different is a strong quality of leadership. And I think of one of my heroes, so to speak, in education, who worked with the University of Minnesota uh, in order to provide a strong vision of data. Everybody takes data in order you don't know what you're doing unless you have data to show
Yeah.
that this is what occurred over this length of time. And what are we going to do to improve what we're doing? I think is probably the strongest link between growth and leadership, and it is to collect, or at least know where you are, know where you've been, and know where you're wanting to go.
That's so important because when you have your vision and then you build your map on how you're going to get there,
Mhm.
but then we also have to measure. Like, I think some people too are sometimes scared of measuring because it's like, oh, am I going to be good enough?
Exactly.
Did I reach expectations, right? That can feel scary, but it gives us the power to grow because then we actually know, okay, I'm actually getting somewhere. And sometimes you go back and measure, you're like, wow, I'm doing more than I thought I was, right? We're
Mhm.
actually doing better than we thought. Or it gives us the opportunity to get better, right? It
Right.
gives us that opportunity for growth. So I think like what you just said was just nail on the head because all leaders need that in
Right.
order to drive the ship where they want it to go.
Right, right. And there are things that impact data collection.
Mhm.
For
Yeah.
example, the years that COVID was such a strong impact on
Mhm.
education, kids weren't able to come to school.
Yeah.
They could use the internet, but our scores fell um, very visibly during that period of time because there simply wasn't the day-to-day education that
Right.
needed to happen.
Right. Yeah. There's so much involved. So like understanding what all is actually affecting
Mhm.
what we're measuring because that can change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, it can.
Do you have any memorable experiences or maybe certain challenges that you may have faced while serving on the boards? And how did you navigate those times, whether it was a challenge or something that you were up against, while still kind of keeping those values and everything that you believed in at front and center?
Mhm. Yeah, there can be all kinds of things
Yeah.
that happen, and sometimes referred to as the drama that takes place within employees.
Yeah.
For example, opinions
Mhm.
are sometimes clashing, or and the leader has the responsibility of looking at that situation and resolving it.
Yeah.
However, whether that means you need to look harder at what's going on, or you need to take someone aside and tell them this is inappropriate, and these are your goals, and this is your measurement. Are you doing this, and how are you doing it, and how is your partner, for example, impacting what you're doing, and do there need to be changes made in that? Other things, as I said, mentioned before, was COVID had a huge impact on education throughout the
Yeah.
state. And I'm sure every state, it was something that everything almost came to a stop. It impacted everything in our lives.
Yeah.
And we all know what something like that can do. There are things that come up unexpectedly all the time. I feared, and when I worked at Phase, I feared that we had buses or transportation available to all the clients wherever they lived within the county. And so some went as far as maybe 25 miles from the center. And was this a good day to go send your vehicles out? Or was it a day that we needed to be closed because of snow, ice, whatever? This is Minnesota. We had to think about how are we going to get where we want to go,
Yeah.
or do we want to go at all
Yeah.
on a day like that? So there's all kinds of things that impact your programming, your ability to impact your clients on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's almost like the ability or skill set, if you will, to anticipate what those will be and be ready for them, because
right.
something you said was they're going to come. It's not, it's not something that's unavoidable. It's we all have distractions and things that we're not expecting. So being able to, yeah, okay, I can see that something might happen, and we might think it's unexpected, but I think most of us could stop and think like, yeah, these are the things that regularly come up for me, or regularly get in my way in this line of work, or this, type of school, or whatever we're working in, or a business that we're running. If we look back, we can see a pattern, and almost being able to anticipate that continuing to happen and have a plan.
Yeah, if you have a plan, yes.
Yeah.
That always helps to have a plan. Maybe the situation doesn't impact the plan, but it's good to have a plan.
So how would you say leaders can balance this drive and push for results and performance while still considering the well-being and happiness of their teams along the way? So making sure that they're still taken care of while we're still hitting our goals.
Well, I think that goes back to the plan, developing a plan, looking at perhaps a strategic planning session where all of your staff are involved and can look at all the aspects of the program and what needs to happen to provide more impactful services. Strategic plans are very popular in school districts, where everyone, including board and staff, get together and develop a strong plan looking into the future, which is, you can only do so much to look at the future, but there's some things that are milestones that are going to happen, and how you're going to react to those kinds of things. What's new on the surface, and is that going to be promising for our kids, or is it going to be another disaster in terms of how kids learn,
Yeah.
making sure that we look at all those things to develop that plan. I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of of looking at the future and planning for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember as a young girl, long before I had any real job, coming into your office and, organizing things, cleaning things up, doing odds and ends tasks for you in the office, organizing magazines, sitting in on meetings. And I had so much fun and I learned a lot actually. Like I was a sponge really. Like I soaked it all up and it was such an influential part of my journey. What would you say to someone else who may be aspiring to a leadership career or role in their life and wanting to work toward becoming a great leader and also make an impact along the way?
Well, first of all, what I think of is you need to have an education.
Mm-hmm.
You need to educate yourself
Yeah.
in the area that you're interested in,
Mm-hmm.
and follow your instincts. Follow you learn from those people around you that are experts. Look at the leaders in your lives that you know that have been successful at leading a company or a nonprofit or whatever it may be, and just practice and lead in the things that you learned. Have your ears open and have your eyes open and follow the leader.
Yeah. I love that answer. And there's two really important pieces in there. One is continuing to learn, right? So being that lifelong learner, but you also said something that I think a lot of people might forget to do, which is follow your gut, follow your instinct. Like you know what's right for you. A lot of times we know the answers and we'll go and ask everybody we know and talk to every therapist, counselor, teacher, and guide in our life. But at the end of the day, we do often know the answer. And so I know that that's how I've gotten through a lot of my life is really listening to that nudge. And and again, we still do want to talk to those resources and learn, right? Because it goes back to that learning piece of listening and taking in everything we need to know to gather the data, right? So we know where we're at and where we want to go. But then listen to this too.
And don't be discouraged by the bumps along the way.
Yeah.
They happen to everybody.
They're unavoidable. Unfortunately.
Sometimes we don't learn from them.
Yeah, sometimes we need the same bump a few times. But when we listen to that, we do end up having this much more fulfilling, rich experience, right?
Yeah. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. As a leader, when we are faced with those challenging obstacles and you look at how we make decisions, what is your approach in making sure that you do make your decisions still again aligned with what it is that you believe in and that impact that you're trying to make?
Well, a leader makes decisions every day, whether they feel like decisions that are of high importance or of small importance.
Yeah.
There are decisions to make as a leader every single day. I would say a good leader considers his team.
Yeah.
And going back to the plan, takes a look at the plan. And does it impact this decision, this big decision that I have to make? Or does it not? Is something that can be decided easily and put aside for next time or to learn from? Keep track of the decisions and remember the values and the philosophy of the organization, they all lead to that plan. How you make a decision, thinking of the people that it will impact, is clearly very important.
Can you share any insights or lessons that you may have learned on the importance of that collaboration and bringing your team along for some of that strategy and planning you talked about so that you can reach some of those bigger organizational goals and make the impact you're wanting to make?
That's a good question, like just like the word collaboration
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
It's a big word. I can think of benefits that I've seen in my career, that have happened because of people's willingness to collaborate or work together.
Yeah.
And it's good that people that maybe across the state who would get together for a conference every year, such as school board conference every year in January, got together as a learning experience, as a shoulder to shoulder, get to know your neighboring school board member. Those are all collaborative kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
And people come together and open their eyes and ears to new things that are going on, to people who are doing something fresh and new that you haven't thought of before. That's what collaboration is all about, to know what your neighbor's doing. And does that work for us? Maybe not, but it's something to consider. I have a friend who was the executive director of a day program for adults with disabilities, who knew the neighboring facility that was doing the same thing, but was losing money and losing ground and almost ready to fall apart. And he stepped in and worked with that team to collaborate and work with that organization. So now the two organizations become one, and they have collaborated and learned how to work together and are very successful in gathering a new group of people who needed services and taking advantage of the things that are available in another community. So the collaboration was very beneficial to both organizations and have benefited many people who were about to go without anything and benefited because of the collaboration that was done. I like the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's amazing what can happen when you bring more brains into any problem or plan. And oftentimes I see we're able to go so much further.
And share resources.
Yes.
And yes.
Yeah. We talked about how often the fear of something will hold people back from moving forward or doing something big or meaningful. And I want to know, how can we move through those things that we don't necessarily want to do in order to achieve our big goals or make an impact that truly means something to us and the people that we're serving or our community?
That makes me laugh because, or it makes me smile at least, because I have experienced the fear of making a mistake,
Yeah.
a fear of saying something wrong,
Yeah.
a fear of that bully who's staring at me from across the room. And I think the way to respond is to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I will check and come back, get back to you with it. I'll call you tomorrow or whatever. Or I misspoke. I said the wrong thing. I meant da 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 da. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of facing your fear.
Mhm.
And to be honest, there are many times that I was driving to a meeting where I knew I was going to be put on the spot, and thinking through it and thinking about how I was going to respond. If praying about it helped, that's what I did.
Yeah.
It's a matter of facing your fear and staring it down.
I like that. I like that visual of like staring it down.
Mhm.
When you said something that ties it all back together too, of having a plan,
Mhm.
even when it's something you're going to be afraid of, like being okay with, I'm a human being and so are each one of them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
None of us get an escape of that human experience and making those mistakes. So being really real about it almost makes us more approachable, more trustworthy.
Hopefully, yeah, I think so. I think that powerful person that you respect, what they're saying, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know everything.
Right. Or let's go figure it out together.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because nobody knows everything. And I've often seen the people who do end up stumbling are the ones who kind of almost just put on this front of, oh, I've got it all together. I
Yeah.
know everything. And then something real happens
Yeah.
and they don't even know how to act, or they retreat, or they're not there. They don't show up for their teams. You know what I mean? Versus someone who's like, yeah, I don't know. Let's figure it out.
Or you say the wrong thing and then you get held, feet get held to the fire
Yeah.
the next day, and
Yeah.
you have to answer for that.
Right.
It's not comfortable either.
No, it's not. And to be able to say, yeah, I'm human. I said the wrong thing. Here's what I meant. Or here's what I'm thinking now. Or, right? So
I was wrong.
yeah. Oh, that's a powerful thing to say.
Mm.
It's hard.
Sometimes scary, yeah.
Yeah. Because you don't want people to think you're less than. You don't want people to think you're weak.
Exactly.
Or like for me, it's oftentimes I don't want people to think I'm not worthy of my position or the next position.
Right.
If you're working on a career path and you want a promotion, you think, oh, if I admit that I don't know this thing over here, they might not consider me for the next promotion.
Right.
Yeah, that can be hard, but it's real.
That it is. Yeah.
Finally, I want to ask you about the legacy that you want to leave behind in the world, whether this is through organizations that you're a part of, your community, your family. What is it that you want to leave behind and you want everyone to remember or be better for because of?
I'm at the age where I do think about my legacy. What am I leaving to those great grandchildren who have to move on in the world, especially what we see in the news these days is some of the things are very frightening.
Yeah.
And disturbing. So I would hope that they would have values and goals.
Yeah.
And be strong.
Yeah.
Do the best you can. Make a good image for yourself. Not that I did all those things. I made mistakes. That everyone makes mistakes.
Yes.
We all do fall down at various times.
Yeah.
And have to get up and brush yourself off again and face the hard decision that has to be made. Face the fact that you failed on this pathway. Is there a better pathway? Is there a more appropriate pathway? That's what we need to think about when we think about a legacy. I hope my grandchildren and grandchildren have a sense of their value to the world and their value to themselves and proceed through life doing the best they can, being the best they can be.
And that's all any of us can do, right?
I guess.
Well, thank you, seriously, from the bottom of my heart for this. This was so special. And I know that a lot of people will get value from your wisdom and what you have to say, because you are so wise and so smart and so important to me.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's very kind of you to say. I'm very proud of you.
I love you.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.